So we're here today at this particular meeting to discuss the external review of Austin Water. We're here, though, because Austinites deserve safe and reliable drinking water. After the February 2022 boil water notice, the fifth major incident with our water quality and supply in as many years, I felt it was important to have an external review of these recent water service interruptions in our community to identify what went wrong, how to prevent future failure, and how to improve the overall resilience and functioning of our water system. I tasked our city auditor with organizing this independent review of our 5 most recent incidents via a resolution that was co-sponsored by council members Tovo, Fuentes, Ellis, Poole, and Kelly, 3 of whom are on the dais with me today. This was approved unanimously on February 17th at the council meeting shortly after the water boil. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to hear a briefing on the final report from the City Auditor's Office and the UT Center for Water and the Environment, which was commissioned to lead the external review. The Water and Wastewater Commission will hear a similar presentation this evening. While the executive team from Austin Water is on site to answer questions and make an initial response, I believe, Austin Water will share their detailed implementation timeline for report recommendations at a joint meeting with the Austin Water Oversight Committee on February 15th. We are still determining whether that'll be in the morning or the afternoon. I want to speak briefly to the process because I think it's important. This external review is not only to make sure that we can deliver the safe drinking water, but also to rebuild trust in Austin Water. It is my understanding that throughout this project, Austin Water has worked with the Office of the City Auditor and the UT Review Team to provide access to facilities, documentation, and personnel, and that Austin Water is working on an implementation plan for 49 of the 53 recommendations, with 19 of those already underway. Austin Water has also committed to providing regular updates to this committee and the Austin Water Oversight Committee to keep us abreast of the implementation process. I want to thank the Austin Water leadership team, especially interim ACM Good and newly appointed Director Ralston, for their commitment to change and transparency during this process. Rethinking our approach to emergency preparedness and stewardship of our resources is not an easy task, and I'm heartened by the response to this report so far. As we work to rebuild trust between our community and our utility, it is my hope that Austin Water will also share clearly with utility customers what they have done and what they are doing to prevent future boil water notices, water outages, and other service interruptions. I want to pause before we go into the report, just for those who are watching who haven't read the report, to make sure that people understand that this report is an important step towards restoring trust in our utility, but it is not the only one that the city has taken or is taking. For those listening, I want to highlight that even before this review was commissioned, our water utility had already taken steps to address the issues that led to the 4 incidents with our water quality. And while this review was in progress in 2022, Austin Water took steps to implement recommendations made in Austin Water's internal after-action report for the most recent water quality issue, the February 2022 boil water notice. In other words, implementing the recommendations that we will hear today is only one piece of our utility's after-action work. I'll call your attention to Appendix 2B of the report being presented today, which lists after-action report recommendations from the various incidents and their implementation status. I will now introduce Corey Stokes, who is our auditor, and thank you to you and your staff for overseeing this effort. This was independent of the city manager's office. It was procured under the guidance of the city auditor. Thank you, Ms. Stokes.
With that excellent introduction. So as you know, we did this as a result of a council resolution last year. We went out and contracted, as mentioned, with the Center for Water and Engineering at the University of Texas, and they had many subcontractors with various expertise that were assembled as part of this team. So today, Dr. Lynn Katz, who led that team, will be presenting. Dr. Katz. Wrong way. Dr. Katz.
Thank you. And is it the Center for Water and the Environment?
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to present the findings of our external review that you so eloquently described our goals for us. I want to start by proceeding with the objectives of this work. And before I do, I'll introduce myself, Lynn Katz. I've been the director of the Center for Water and the Environment for a number of years, and I'm also a professor in civil, architectural, and environmental engineering at the University of Texas, and I've been there since 1998, so you can do the math. The objectives for this report are shown here. As Councilwoman said, we reviewed 5 water quality incidents that were identified by the City Council that took place between October 2018 and February 2022. We evaluated whether current technology is sufficient for meeting regulatory requirements. We evaluated infrastructure for its ability to meet design requirements. We evaluated operations to determine if they could meet design flows during normal conditions and extreme events. And beyond that, we were asked also to provide recommendations to increase resiliency moving forward and identify related issues that can improve the overall resilience and functioning of the utility. We addressed 3 key questions. As part of this, the first was, how does the water quality that's produced by the watershed impact the raw water quality entering the plant? And what are the risks created by that? And again, we considered both normal operations and extreme conditions. From an engineering perspective, are the processes capable of handling this range of water quality? And then finally, from a staffing and organizational perspective, is Austin Water positioned to operate the plant over the range of water quality conditions that have been observed? So, to do this, we assembled a team. Okay? You'll notice the 3 square boxes in the center that highlight 3 different areas where we assembled 3 distinct groups of our team to focus on. So the first is operations, distribution systems, and water quality. The second is organizational structure, communications, and emergency response. And the third is infrastructure and energy requirements. Now, all of the members of this team are academicians or consultants with years of experience. So within the operations group, Sarah Clark, Phil Branduber, and Christine Owen have decades of experience in water treatment plant operations. Within our organizational structure, communications, and emergency response group, Casey Faust is an expert in water infrastructure systems and project management. Carrie Stevens is an expert in organizational communication technology. And Harry Evans was a former chief of staff at the Austin Fire Department and led our emergency response review. And then the third group was the infrastructure and energy requirements, and that was led by a team at Brown and Caldwell, engineers who reviewed the infrastructure with respect to design requirements and current status, and Eyal Glazer, who's a research associate whose expertise is in energy. We sent these 3 teams out independently, and I'm really excited to report that all 3 teams came back with a consistent set of observations and similar recommendations, which gave us a lot of confidence in our findings. So when we started looking at this project and worked with the city and Austin auditors to look at how to go about this, the first thing we said is we have to provide a scope that makes sense, that we can do in a timely fashion and answers the question raised. So to do that, we decided to focus on the Ulrich Water Treatment Plant, first because there's commonalities between all 3 plants. They all obtain water from the lower Colorado River. They all use as a key process in removing hardness and treating water to meet requirements with lime softening. And then we decided to focus specifically on Ulrich Water Treatment Plant because it's critical to the service to South Austin. It's the most complex of the 3 treatment plants. You can see in the middle of that figure how the sizes of those clarifiers change, and so that makes even operating these fairly complex clarifiers more challenging when you have different sizes across the plant. It was impacted by 4 of the 5 events identified by the Austin City Council, and it's been subject to significant staffing changes over the past several years. So we thought this was the key plant to focus on during our work, although many of our recommendations extend to all 3 plants. Okay. Our approach was to provide multiple lines of evidence that supported our observations and recommendations. We researched best management practices, staffing, Austin water policy, procedures, treatment plant design specifications, plant maintenance records, asset management programs, capital improvement, training materials, water quality data, historical data from source water monitoring, historical raw and finished water data, after-action reports, organization and management strategies for similar organizations like Austin Water. We conducted over 25 interviews with personnel across Austin Water, with going from assistant directors all the way down to operators. We reviewed the infrastructure and operations and compared it to regulations provided by both the state and the nation. And we looked at educational requirements for operators to focus on staff hiring and promotion. And then finally, we compared the information for communication and public information to documents such as the American Water Works Trending in an Instant, a risk communication guide for water utilities. So I want to first thank Austin Water again, because they were instrumental in providing access to all of this documentation that we received from the utility, opening up to the personnel to interviews and follow-up meetings and answering questions and very rapid response. So thanks for that. I want to move on now to looking at question 1, so the first of our questions, which is how does water quality in the watershed affect the water quality entering the plant? And the bottom line is that the lower Colorado River water quality is consistent with respect to key water quality parameters over long periods of time that we studied, but it's subject to spikes in turbidity during storm events. So what I'm showing you here is a plot of data that we compiled from what we received from Austin Water from 2000 to 2022. And what we're plotted on the y-axis is raw water turbidity. And we've highlighted areas where you see significant spikes, highlighting that the spikes that we saw in 2018 are, that we saw in fall of 2018 during that event, is significantly higher than many of the other spikes that have been seen over years. We also noticed that this relatively consistent water quality that extended over the 10-year, 11-year period, or sorry, 22-year period that we looked at, also held for total organic carbon, pH, total hardness, and alkalinity. So other water quality parameters that are key to the operation of a lime softening plant. Okay. The other thing I want you to notice is that even though we saw those spikes in the raw water quality, when we take a look at the finished water quality from 2011 to 2022, you'll notice that the finished water turbidity is consistent and consistently low, and falls below the regulations required by TCEQ and the primary drinking water standards, which says that it must be less than 0.3 nephelometric humidity units. This is a unit to quantify cloudiness, and basically is about thinking about light scattering. And this value of 0.3 is, as I said, a national standard, refers to averaging over or looking at the month, and then at no time can the turbidity go higher than 1 NTU. So the only event that led to a turbidity increase above that value or above any of those and led to the boil water notice of 2000 was the 2018 flood event. The 2022 boil water notice was not a result of the watershed, and so in this slide I'm focusing just on that watershed properties. Okay. There we go. All right, so moving to question 2. From an engineering perspective, are the processes capable of handling this range of water quality? We do believe that the infrastructure is appropriate to treat raw water from Lake Austin, and that the process design aligns with regulatory requirements. So that's the bottom line for this issue, suggesting that the plant is appropriate. As we look at this plant, sorry, I'm losing the, there we go, okay. As I said, this is a lime softening based treatment plant, very well suited for the raw water quality associated with the lower Colorado River, which has sufficiently high hardness and alkalinity that you want to remove the hardness from the water. It meets regulatory requirements, but one of the things that I'd like to point out is that lime softening processes really benefit from very stable water quality. So the process that's used, this upflow clarifier that you see on the right, is one of the more challenging types of processes. It requires more experienced operators, and it's not a system that you're going to basically start up or change conditions on the fly. It takes some time, takes hours to get things going, and it takes time for a new clarifier to be brought online. So it's not associated with very rapid changes in system conditions. Okay. Oh, sorry, there's one more thing I wanted to comment on this slide, and is that one of the things that's also important to recognize as we did this review is that the Ulrich water treatment plant typically operates at about 35% of the rated capacity. And so several of our recommendations point to the need to look at these processes at the rated design capacity over the next several months and years, because they haven't been tested at the 167 million gallons per day that they were rated for. So that is something that needs to be looked at. All right. So before I move on to question 3, I want to review the responsiveness to Austin Water to the incidents that we identified. And I want to focus on the water quality and treatment, which is associated with the 2 first objectives or questions that we've answered. Okay. I also want to highlight that in all of the incidents that we see, there's no single cause, but rather a series of combined and cascading issues that lead to these types of events. Okay. So the first is, and I think this was said earlier, Austin Water has made significant progress toward implementing a majority of the after action report recommendations already, and these have improved resiliency, we believe. Okay. So I'm going to start with the fire foam incident because we didn't spend a lot of time on this in the report because Austin Water really had no responsibility for the cause of this incident, and we believe they responded appropriately to the issue and rapidly resolved it in cooperation with Austin Fire Department. The October 2018 boil event, this was a water quality event in which the turbidity, alkalinity, and hardness changed changed tremendously. It was an unprecedented excursion from typical water quality parameters, and would have been a challenge for any treatment plant to respond to. But from the after action reports, one of the recommendations in the studies that were done was the addition of a polymer system to provide further resiliency. That polymer system has been installed at Ulrich, and it's now being installed in the other 2 treatment plants, and we believe that this will provide further resiliency. We have reviewed the data that came out of the testing of the stored water from that, and agree with the findings that a polymer system could be helpful. The zebra mussel issue, we believe this was an issue in which there was delayed response and it was more reactive than proactive to an emerging issue. There was tremendous data that was being presented nationally at conferences and in documentation that zebra mussels were spreading towards Austin. And we felt like, this could have been avoided, but the Austin Water has responded to this in their after action reports. They've installed a copper sulfate system to head that off and are implementing a newer system as well that will also help resolve this issue in the future. In contrast to that, though, one of the things that we noticed and we looked at was their response to another emerging concern that's coming out, which is cyanotoxins. Okay? These concerns and their ability to address this appear to be a lot more proactive. There's been meetings going on, there have been discussions, and there's already a report out saying here's an approach that we can employ to address these issues if they become apparent. At this point, we haven't had any issues with it at the plant, so I don't want to alarm anyone. But my point is that this is a proactive response, and I think it shows positive signs for Austin Water moving forward. Winter Storm Uri highlighted the critical role of energy resiliency, and Austin Water is moving forward with the emergency preparedness plan required by Senate Bill 3. And finally, February 22nd, boil water. This was a serious and avoidable failure that exposed some of the management organizational issues, including staffing, training, internal communications, emergency response, and management. And so this is one of the areas we spent a lot of our recommendations because we felt like this is where attention needed to be. Okay. So, moving forward, as we think about resiliency in the future, we can focus on question 3, which says, from a staffing and an organizational perspective, is operate the plant over the range of water quality conditions observed. Our review suggested there's a serious disconnect between what upper management's efforts to improve operations and the interaction with the plant and engagement with the plant to be able to implement these effectively. One of the things that we noticed is that the current organizational structure has some challenges with respect to internal communications, emergency response, and attention to plant needs. If you take a look at a plot that we've put together of direct reports and secondary reports to assistant directors, you'll notice that there's one that stands out, and that is the assistant director over operations, who has a significantly higher number of reports. Now, work by Gordon that we cited in our work suggests that a narrow span of control is appropriate for work that is complex by nature, high risk, receives a high degree of scrutiny, requires a great deal of coordination, and is geographically dispersed. To us, that fits Austin Water, and we agree with this concept of narrow span of control. Key concerns identified as well include effective leadership and adequate staffing at Ulrich. When we talked with the people at the plant, there were concerns raised by the staff that included poor compensation, frustration over the lack of effective training, accessibility to the standard operating procedures that weren't being routinely accessed, and the time required for capital improvement projects funding to be funded, and executed. Okay. So I'm going to highlight some of the organizational structure recommendations that we looked at because, again, these are the key areas that we wanted to focus on today. The first is to address organizational structure issues by establishing clear lines of supervision and reporting expectations. We really believe that there should be a single person in charge of the Ulrich treatment plant. And this is a recommendation that Austin Water has agreed with, and we're excited that that can move forward. We believe that there needs to be greater emphasis on documentation, training, and team building, and we have a number of recommendations that address this issue. We also believe that there needs to be an examination of attrition and retention, and that this needs to be improved through partnerships, educational programs, increasing compensation, and career advancement opportunities. We believe that there needs to be greater engagement of the plant staff in the asset management, operational procedures, and emerging issues in water treatment. And finally, we believe that Austin Water should report directly to the city manager to streamline communications and processes. Okay. In terms of emergency management recommendations, again, we're going to go back to recruiting and retaining skilled workforce across the organization. And again, this is an example as when we send different people out to look at things and to interview, we're coming back with similar findings. The skilled workforce is a key issue, we believe. Training is needed for plant-specific processes, emergency management software, and scenario training. The Department Operations Center Emergency Management Facility appears to be well-designed and suitable to handle events. And Austin Water has a robust online emergency platform via VHG for handling emergency operations. But more training is needed so that all staff understand how the Austin Water decision matrices occur and are clear about escalation processes. So we believe that they need to establish, document, communicate, and continually reinforce notification thresholds for escalation of emergent events. And then finally, we believe that the span of control also needs to be reduced at the plant during emergency events, similar to what happens at the Department Operations Center. So overall, we made over 50 recommendations. In 4 of the areas, we feel like the after-action reports have done a very good job of addressing a lot of the issues that we saw as well. There were still some remaining that we wanted to highlight and that are provided in the report. One is associated with water quality variability. Okay. The polymer system is a very good step towards resiliency, but one of the other things you notice in the water quality changes that occurred during the 2018 event is that the alkalinity and hardness also dropped. And this can be concerning for a lime softening plant. And so we think there should be a review looking at whether there's potential for this to be a concern in future events that are, again, very, very extreme. In addition, we think there needs to be a focus on emerging contaminants like there is with cyanotoxins. There are other emerging contaminants that could be of concern that need to be addressed as well. In terms of the design capacity, I mentioned already that the plant normally operates at about 35% of capacity. We really think process testing needs to occur at design flows to make sure that we're prepared. Emergency energy resilience, again, we believe that Senate Bill 3, the emergency preparedness plan items are being addressed and that they need to continue. In terms of public communication effectiveness, this is an area where we saw a lot of improvement from the after-action reports, and I wanted to give a shout out because it's clearly more proactive and responsive, and I think they've made great improvements to this. One area, though, that we did want to mention was that at the present time, the Customer Service Center for Dispatch does not report to the Assistant Director for Communication, and we think this is a change that is going to happen from our understanding, and we support that fully. Okay. We think it's important for Austin Water to own their entire customer experience, and that doesn't mean billing. I know all of us enjoy just getting a single bill. So moving forward, as we move to areas where we think that more work needs to be done, one of the issues that came about is a lot of the low priority preventive maintenance has been deferred due to staffing issues that, with 30% open staff position, it's hard to find the resources to deal with deferred maintenance. Now, the priorities are being put on maintenance that is associated with risk to human health and delivery of the water, but there's a lot of other maintenance items that need to happen on a routine basis at a plant, and this is an area that we saw some concern. Okay. Of particular concern is the solids management system, which is a critical part of any treatment plant. If you can't get your solids or your residuals offline and they can't stay on the plant, then you can't operate. So one of the areas that we had concern was the centrifuges. Their age and condition is such that they require a lot of maintenance, which is putting more demand on the staff. And in 2020, there was a review of the solids handling system. The centrifuges are set to be replaced, and we really hope that can happen as soon as possible. Finally, I'm not going to talk more about the organizational effectiveness and operations because I dealt with that already. So I just want to provide some final comments. One is that Austin Water has a long history of providing high-quality water to the city, over 100 years. The water quality and treatment facilities are appropriate, and finished water meets national and state standards more than 99% of the time. Someone asked me I should put plus on there, and I said more than 99 plus, but they're doing a great job, and they've been doing it for a really long time, and there have been these occasions that we've seen, but I believe that there's a lot of commitment by Austin Water for meeting this mission of providing high quality. I believe that the staff from top to bottom understand their role in protecting the public from acute and chronic health risks associated with the consumption, which makes this a very, very critical infrastructure. Finally, we believe that effective operation of a treatment plant as complex as Ulrich requires a full complement of operators, a better trained staff, and coordination among the staff, supervisors, and managers at Ulrich and across Austin Water. We hope that our report provides recommendations that Austin Water will help Austin Water improve their ability to protect human health and provide safe water to the city and its residents, both during normal operations and extreme events. And with that, thanks for your attention. I want to also send my thanks to the auditors who worked with us, Corey Stokes and Kathy Harrison. And if you want to contact either me or Corey, we provided the information here. So thanks again for your attention. Be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Dr. Katz. As is our practice, we will, before we ask you questions, we will invite up Austin Water if they want to provide any response today in advance of their larger presentation. Yes, thank you.
Good morning, council members. My name is Shay Rawls-Rolson. I'm the director of Austin Water. Thank you for your time and attention today to these matters, and thank you to the Office of the City Auditors, the UT Center for Water and Environment and their team, and to our interim ACM, who was our interim director at Austin Water over the majority of this review, Robert Good. And especially thank you to the Austin Water leadership and staff who participated so fully in this review. We are a learning organization, and we are already working on many of these recommendations. We want to reinforce areas where we're strong, and we want to strengthen areas that need it. So as you mentioned, Chair Alter, we are already working on many of these recommendations. We will report out more details on our implementation plan at a future meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have today about our current status or progress.
Thank you. So really briefly, thank you, Dr. Katz and your team. I think this is a really important report for restoring trust and helping us to understand what we're doing right and where we need to improve. It's important that we acknowledge where we're doing right. For those who are watching, I do want to point out that the report highlights a lot of really important issues that we need to address, particularly with respect to organization and management. And I think we'll be talking a lot about those, in our questions. What I'd like to propose that we do, colleagues, is that we can each ask a couple questions in series. Please keep in mind that Austin Water will be coming back with their implementation report. You obviously can ask questions of Austin Water as much as you want, but this will be the main opportunity that we have, I believe, with the team, although they may come back on the 15th. So I know for me, I will, in my questions, probably focus more on the UT team and highlight things that I want Austin Water to answer when they come back with the implementation plan, rather than have you give a partial answer today. But obviously, anyone can ask anything of Austin Water. So I'm going to start with one or two questions, and then I'll pass it on to other folks. Did you want to speak before I ask my questions, or did you want to go next?
Are you going to lead off with the questions or end with your questions?
I have a lot of questions, so I was going to do one or two questions and then let other people each ask a couple of questions, and then we'll kind of rotate.
I'll be happy to
through.
go after you ask your first couple.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So, Dr. Katz, if you wouldn't mind coming up, I think my couple of questions are for you and your team. So overall, one of the things that struck me in this report was that it wasn't a big emphasis on billions of dollars of infrastructure. There were a few things like the sludge treatment, and maybe we can come back to that one. But you did identify that there are obstacles in the capital improvement project process that you observed. So can you speak to that and the related learnings that you had about the status of the internal condition assessment, which would also be related to the capital improvement process?
Sure. There's a couple issues. One is, the capital improvement process, it can take up to 10 years between identifying an issue that gets approved, that's going to get approved for or looked at for that process, to implementation. That can be a long time for a critical piece of infrastructure at a plant. So one of our concerns is about the time frame. You could see that was also expressed by the staff, and so that's one area. The other area that we felt, and this was really more about engagement, we talked with Austin Water about the process that they use for the CIP, the development of that process, how it's working, how it's evolving, and it sounded great, right? It was, it seemed like it would be a good process. The issue that we have, though, is that we felt like there wasn't enough connection between that process that exists and can evaluate important areas and the operations at a particular plant, especially at Ulrich. We felt like without good engagement between the groups and across Ulrich itself, then and the lack of staffing to be able to look at, and evaluate different pieces of infrastructure at the plant, it creates a difficult situation for things to get prioritized at a level that move them into that CIP area where they're going to get funded. So I think that was our view.
Thank you. And then my second question is that there were 4 recommendations, or effectively 3 because there was overlap, where Austin Water disagreed with the report. Can you, as a representative of your team, speak to your perspective on the underlying problems that you wanted Austin Water to solve in making your recommendations, or what you hope would be accomplished with those changes? So there was more autonomy from HR, the reporting relationship with the city manager, and the span of control of the operations assistant director, I believe, were the three areas that they disagreed with, and the city manager reporting relationship was repeated twice.
So let me speak first to HR. Staffing issues at utilities are national problems. This is not an Austin problem. There's a report that comes out every year called the State of the Water Industry, okay? And in that report, it highlights, the major areas of concern. In 2022, aging workforce and anticipated retirements is number 4 on that list. Number 11 is talent attraction and retention. This is a national problem. In fact, even EPA has gotten involved in creating programs, and I think the American Water Works Association has applied for a grant to actually look at this issue and try and find solutions. We believe that there needs to be a concerted effort to attract people to Austin Water and other utilities, okay? The other issue that we found is that, Austin, water is a critical infrastructure, right? I mean, people think of energy as a critical infrastructure if you don't have power. If the power goes out at your house, you know it. You're out, you're without power. If the water is no longer safe to drink, you don't necessarily even know it right away, unless there's great communication to get you that information. And so, we're protecting the health of the city of Austin. The responsibility of a worker at a water utility is significant. They're working hard and they take this seriously. And as a result, we see that hiring at a utility that provides water to a city is an area where staffing is critical. And we believe that if, that hiring at higher levels is key, because, we're seeing across the board that there's attrition across the country at higher levels. People are retiring, people are moving on. We want to make sure that the salaries are competitive, both with our neighboring cities, with neighboring jobs around, and competitive nationally. Austin Water has done a market survey. They made recommendations. I think they made like 100, and only half of them got implemented, and then the city raised the minimum salary. And so, we really believe that this is an area that needs to be addressed. With respect to the span of control, we really also feel that when you look at, there are pros and cons to how the span of control goes. But when you have a system in which there is a wide span of control for someone who has a lot of people reporting to them, and some of those reports are somewhat conflicting, right? Everybody wants their infrastructure taken care of. Everybody wants their work done. Everybody needs the attention to basically be in contact with the people who are overseeing that span of control and have interaction with them to be able to make sure that the problems that exist can be seen. And, it's about touches. And the more touches we feel that are available, and the greater ability to focus on issues rapidly is better with a smaller span of control. And from our research, we felt like, the criticality of the infrastructure, the high risk, the public scrutiny, all of these things dictate a narrower span of control. And then with respect to the third issue, reporting, I also want to say though, reporting to the city manager, one of the things that we're actually really happy about was that Austin Water does agree that there should be a single point of leadership at the Ulrich treatment plant, and they do agree with that. We also leave because of being able to have much more rapid access when it's needed to the city manager. We believe that, the issues with this critical infrastructure should be similar to what Austin Energy has. In fact, Austin Energy is like the closest sister agency. Right now, Austin Water reports to mobility, and we're not sure that that's really the best report for them. And so that's why we made the recommendation for the city manager.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize Vice Chair Poole, and if each of you, and then Councilmember Fuentes, and then Councilmember Kelly, who's on the committee, and then if Councilmember Alter, it looks like you're up, and then I don't know if Councilmember Herbert Madison has questions. If you could each just ask a couple questions, and we'll rotate through if you have more questions. Thank you. Vice Chair Poole.
Thanks, and I just wanted to open by thanking the auditor, her staff, and Austin Water and the staff at that department for digging in and taking on the responsibility of accountability and transparency. I just wanted to give a shout out to our new Austin Water Director, Ms. Rawls-Rawlson. That was quite an introduction for the council and this committee to you, and thank you for a very careful, thoughtful presentation of the department's positions. Mr. Good, thank you also for helping to shepherd these concerns over the last many months and your continuing involvement. We are stronger for the professionalism that all of you bring every day to the City of Austin, and I thank you and the city manager for all of that. I did want to just focus a little bit on what happened at Ulrich and ask Professor Katz, is it Dr. Katz?
Both are perfectly fine. I am a doctor and I am a professor.
Okay, great. Professor, we know that what happened at Ulrich was probably the result of some cascading situations with staffing and hiring and advancement and salaries. But we also know that this was an intentional act by one or two individuals that caused the problem. And I understand these folks are no longer with the City of Austin. So with regard to deliberate action and knowing that these actions were intentional, can you help us understand how we can manage that through things like increased staffing and oversight and salaries and training? I imagine there's a direct line to that, including having a better sense of who might be the person who would take this kind of drastic action for whatever motivations, but identifying that kind of a situation in advance. But what in the portfolio of recommendations and improvements could have kept that from happening?
So first of all, I'm not going to speak to what the any intent or whatever associated with what happened.
That's fine.
During that event. I'm not privy to that, and so I can only report on what did happen and what we see. We see an overworked staff that's trying to, I don't know if overwork's the right term I want to use. There's a lot of things going on at a water treatment plant, and there's not enough staff to be able to really address all the needs. We talked about the deferred maintenance. We talked about, the complexity of Ulrich in terms of its operations. The need to have really even good interaction between the distribution system who's saying we need more water and the understanding that the plant just can't turn a knob and produce more water. But like any organization, culture is a key, and culture comes from the types of recommendations we made: good training, good interactions, the ability to be able to be rewarded for, to receive merit awards for good work, and being able to see advancement, being able to have a situation where you believe that your voice is being heard all the way from the next person you work to and then all the way up, a line of communication that's working well together. The ability to know your job, right, well, to know that the people who were working, who were operating, say, the filters in the shift before you did it the same way you're going to do it, having standard operating procedures that you can rely on, understanding escalation of incidents. And when people work at a place where they are comfortable with the system and they're being compensated appropriately and they're being acknowledged for the work that they do, I think you start to build that type of culture in which everyone is invested in the plant.
I think that's true, and I think the fostering of a sense of accountability all the way down to each individual employee at the city, so a pride in the work, a recognition that as public servants we are delivering important utilities and services to our community that they rely upon, and the health and the safety of the community is our unique job. I appreciate the difficulties in all of that when we talk about human behavior and personnel and human resources. It's always a very difficult engagement, but I think that the information that you have in this report, the request to step up the levels of engagement among the staff, to increase the staffing, to tighten the lines of reporting, increased training levels, and a real focus on the building of the staff will go a long way to supporting what is, as you point out, a well-functioning 99% sturdy, predictable resource for the city of Austin. And I think that this audit and this report and these findings come at a really important time for us to reset with a new director. It's a new year. There's a sense of urgency and there's a sense of engagement and activity, I think, throughout the City of Austin personnel as an entity, looking forward to ways to continue to make better improvements in the way we deliver services and the precise nature of accountability and transparency. So I thank you. That was really about the only thing I wanted to address here today, the difficulties relating to the human resources component, but also the very important elements that you bring in this report that if we can build on them should make a real difference, and hopefully these sorts of things won't happen again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Fuentes and then Councilmember Kelly.
For the presentation, lots of excellent information, and certainly, I appreciate your comments when you talked about how the employees at Ulrich, well, really at all Austin Water plants, are critical employees doing very important work for our city in delivering water, quality water services, reliable services, as well as maintaining the trust of our community. And for forecasting the trends that we're seeing in the industry, knowing that we do have an aging workforce, knowing that we have a recruitment and retention issue, I'd like to invite the new director of Austin Water to come up, because I'd like to ask her some questions. Thank you. One of the parts of today's presentation that stuck out to me is the 30% staff vacancy that we have at Austin Water. Director, welcome. Congratulations on leading our utility. And I guess first and foremost, I'd like to hear from you on what your vision is for the utility and what are your initial thoughts on how we address a 30% staffing vacancy, knowing just how critical it is for us to have the staff at Ulrich and at all of our plants delivering these critical operations.
Well, I think like many intractable problems, it's a matter of using all the tools in our toolbox. As Dr. Katz mentioned, this staffing is an issue across the water industry, and certainly it's an issue across the city of Austin. And so we Our Human Resources Division within Austin Water is really engaged on some strategies for recruiting new folks into our plants that include, having meet and greets at the plants where they can see what they would be getting into, where we would provide application assistance on the spot, those kinds of really thoughtful and creative opportunities. So we're working with the Human Resources Department on some of these strategies. Dr. Katz mentioned or alluded to salary compression. So as we implement our salary study and also as the city addresses our minimum wage, we have some salary compression issues that we need to go back and address. And then we have, other elements of our salary study that we will continue to work with Human Resources to address. So that's kind of the tactical, kind of some of the elements of the plan, some of the tools in our toolbox, and we'll come back with, slides and more detail on that at a later date. But, fundamentally, Dr. Katz spoke a lot to the issues of culture, and that's really what I see at Austin Water. What brought me to Austin Water was the dedication of our staff, the level of technical expertise across our organization, and the commitment to innovation, really from field staff to executive team members. I was out at Ulrich yesterday meeting with the operations staff and the maintenance staff, and they're stoked to do some of this stuff. The operations staff were talking about being excited to put the plant through its paces and really establish the processes that we need to be able to run it be confident in our ability to bring it up to higher flow rates as needed. And so I think there's a lot of energy at Austin Water around really being the best that we can be, and that we have all the tools we need to do that.
That's great. That's great to hear. And, ensuring that we have fair compensation and competitive compensation for our workforce is something that is very important to me as a policymaker. And so when do you think you would have those plans available and submitted to HR? What kind of timeline are you thinking about for us to raise the wage?
We've already submitted plans to HR. We've gotten some feedback. Some of those have been implemented or are in the processes of being implemented. Others, we are still engaging with them on. Not all of our suggestions meet their requirements, and so we're evaluating those areas. So it's an ongoing process. I don't have a definitive timeline when I think we'll sort of be through this part of it, other than to say it's really something that we have to do as a part of our normal business on an ongoing basis. I don't think that we're going to have an action item list of 10 items and then be done with this issue. I think staffing and compensation is just a continual challenge of the future.
Thank you. And, I know that we have our ACM Veronica Briceño in the room, and to the extent that I can just really emphasize the importance of having these plans approved and worked on in our HR department, not only for Austin Water, but across the board, is of utmost importance to us. And just knowing the critical staffing shortages that we are still continuing to see across the city, I think that it's important that that folks know what a priority it is to us. And my last thing I wanted to highlight, and just thank you for visiting Ulrich yesterday and having those conversations. The next question I had is how, because one of the recommendations that was highlighted is the engagement of plant staff at Ulrich in the development of standard operating procedures and just having them more involved in what was going on. How has this information been communicated to them, and how do you foresee involving plant staff in the changes to come?
Well, we have been in the process of updating our standard operating procedures for some time, and in the after action of the February 22 boil water notice event, one of our strategies was to implement trainers at the plants, and we've been working on that, and we now have those staff identified and in place, and we're getting them ramped up, and we're getting plant staff engaged with those folks. So it's a work in progress, but in terms of engaging plant staff, that's a focus for us as we work on these updates to our standard operating procedures, training staff, getting everyone doing the same things in the same ways. And really, what I heard a lot about yesterday was knowledge management and knowledge transfer. And so, field staff are very focused on how do they get that information out of the brains of the more senior people and into the brains of the new folks that we're bringing on board. So there's a lot of focus just within the ranks of the operations and maintenance staff on that knowledge management. You can't write down every single thing you need to know about how to operate a very complex treatment plant and how to maintain highly complex equipment. And so that kind of on-the-job training has to be a component in what we do too.
Most definitely. Thank you, and congratulations again. And just thank you to everyone involved, Dr. Katz and our city auditor and her team. I really appreciate all the work that has been done and the fact that we're able to have this briefing in a timely manner so that we are getting this information back out to our community. And I want to thank Chair Alter for her strong leadership on getting this audit conducted and this report to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fuentes. Councilmember Kelly, are you ready?
Thank you. I am, and I just want to echo what you said and what all my colleagues have said about being so thankful that we're at a place right now because of the leadership of Councilmember Alter really coming forward to make this audit happen. We have a unique opportunity, I think, as council members to really understand the ongoings at Austin Water, and areas of opportunities have been identified, and so I'm thankful for that. Congratulations on your new role.
Thank you.
Welcome to the City of Austin family. It's great. Some of the things that I was concerned about are the 30% vacancy rate, the 70% of Austin Water operators feeling burned out and frustrated. And I know earlier Dr. Katz had mentioned the compression issue, kind of alluded to it, but other than needing to fix compression, have you noticed any other unintended consequences perhaps from raising the minimum wage to the $20 per hour that may affect morale or anything at Austin Water that we could address?
Well, I think we have to factor that into our future plans for compensation and retention practices. I think it does create frustration on the part of staff that have been there for a long time to have new staff coming in very close to their rate of pay. So we need to address that. I don't have a 5-point list of how we're going to do that, but it's certainly very much on our minds.
Okay, thank you. And then you talk about the knowledge loss. Do you have any sort of mentorship program over at Austin Water or anything similar to that would help when there's a retirement, kind of provide that inherent knowledge that you can't just learn from reading a book?
We do have our maintenance teams team up the newer hires with the more experienced staff, and so they learn on the job as well as learning how to use the standard operating procedures. So we have that. I don't know that it's necessarily a strictly formal process, but it's certainly a practice that we use in order to train new operators, and that's common in utilities. You don't come in knowing how to, even if you have experience as an operator or a maintenance worker, you don't have experience with that particular plant as new staff. So it's very common to have those kinds of on-the-job training practices in place.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ryan Alter.
Thank you so much. Thanks for letting me join in today. I actually have a couple questions for Dr. Katz, if that's possible. And my question is a little technical. You'll forgive the engineer in me, but are these plants rated for a certain level of intake turbidity? So, for instance, if it hits 300 NTU, do we know we're going offline, or how does that work?
So the plants are rated for a particular design capacity based on the infrastructure in terms of flow.
Okay.
So Ulrich is rated for 167 million gallons per day based on the requirements to obtain the effluent that it is targeting.
Got it.
Now, so that means if you go to TCEQ recommendations, or you look at 10 state standards or national standards, they're going to look at how fast is the flow going over, with the intent that the processes are set. Being designed for a particular turbidity, any plant that's designed based on the water quality that you have is going to be designed within certain ranges and expectations of changing water quality parameters. But in 2018, the turbidity went, from its normal influent of, where it occurs less than 6 NTUs 90% of the time or something like that, to as high as over 300. Okay, so we're talking about, me holding up a glass of water that you don't see anything in, almost, even at that 6 NTUs, maybe a little bit of cloudiness, to something that looks like there's mud in the water. It's it's not gonna be translucent. So for a treatment plant to be designed for that range over a short period of time, but a long enough duration of the event. So for example, Austin Water has handled, from my understanding of looking at the data, events that hit very high turbidities, but they don't stay there that long. So it's a question of time, it's a question of the amount, and it's also, have you done scenario testing to know how to change the operating conditions? So when you're doing a softening plant, you're adding chemicals, right? If you look at the design of the plant, you'll see a number of points for chemical addition. Some of those are associated with, the lime, the process itself for lime softening, and so it includes the addition of lime, and it includes the addition of iron, and trying to optimize those things. We do that in the lab. You can test it, but doing something in the lab is not the same as doing it when you're treating, 60 million gallons per day.
Right.
So you can optimize the operations for it. You can try and stress test water quality conditions, but not very easily because you don't have enough water to bring in that's at a turbidity of 300. So you do these things in the lab and then you hope. So after the 2018 event, what happened is that the city hired, or I don't know hiring processes well, so Austin Water basically asked an engineering firm to look at what they could do, and they did a lot of testing in the lab. And they did it with water that was banked from the event. And from that, they looked at all sorts of different operational conditions, and they were able to identify operational conditions that could handle that water in the lab. And, based on, not having a solids contact clarifier that's like the one that, or an upflow clarifier that's like that. That's what you can do. So you can be prepared, you can study, but that type of an excursion is very extreme. And if you looked at the data that we showed you with turbidity, there were other excursions of which they were easily able, I wouldn't say easily, I wasn't at the plant, but they were able to handle the changes in water quality.
Right. Well, and the reason I ask is, as I look at that chart, what stands out to me as those peaks seem to be growing, right? And maybe that's just a small sample size, and you touched on it a little bit of looking at, and this might be outside of your bound of what you're looking at, but are there any factors in terms of the intake, whether it's, increased use of our resources that are leading to the turbidity being at a greater level when an event like a flood or something happens?
We did not study that. So, I don't think the data showed us enough statistical evidence that we could we could say that.
Sure.
We knew that during that month in 2018, there was it was a 2-month period that hit record rains over that period of time. So whether they're going to happen again, I mean, like that, if you can ask the hydrologists in the room who look at this more frequently, but, we think of things like 100-year storms or 500-year storms, and those values have actually changed in the last few years.
Right.
So I can't really speak to the future like that. I can say that the water's been pretty stable overall, and that there's no evidence that it's changed. We looked at water quality parameters, over 20-year periods for a lot of parameters, not just turbidity. We looked at alkalinity and hardness, and we don't see significant trends. There's been a slight drop in pH a little bit, but it seems to be coming back as well, and so that could just be a cyclical trend. So we don't have enough data to be able to
Okay.
comment, I think.
Then the other question, some of my colleagues have touched on this, so around the staffing challenge, and you mentioned that this is not a local challenge, this is something that
Right.
people are dealing with across the country. Given that that is the case, what are other cities or utilities doing about it? Are they, and this might be outside of this report, it might be just in your anecdotal work, are they hiring third-party people? Or are we just all struggling to do deferred maintenance? What's happening out there?
So I think, there's a lot of things that people are trying. I've read some things about, looking at hiring more diverse groups, doing more, trying to be more inclusive, looking at, groups that would have particular opportunities to come in with expertise, including veterans, I think was one of the ones that I saw. Educational programs, providing opportunities, say at the community college, to get certified or to work on the education associated with that. Certification takes a while, and that's why I added that figure that shows what it takes to move to the point where you're a supervisor, which takes, at least about 5 years of experience. And so I think education, I think, I feel like I want to say if you pay them, they will come. But, it takes time to get the experience, and it takes training, and I think a lot of other utilities are looking at this as well, and I think
Okay.
there are opportunities out there. As I said, EPA has looked, has sort of cited this, and the American Water Works Association has a grant, I think, as part of that, looking at the issue, so I think there are things out there.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you, Chairwoman Alter. Excited to dive into this as we go forward. Terrible pun, I'm sorry.
Thank you, and welcome to the dais.
Thank you.
So I have several other questions for Dr. Katz and your team. So one of the things that you cite in the report is a high reliability organization. And in particular, I would like to understand how a high reliability organization would approach scenario planning. So this is something that I've heard over and over again from the advocates that helped us move forward with Water Forward and who've been really active in our water decisions. I'd like to understand that, what should we be doing under best case for our scenario planning? So if you could speak to that, please.
Let me reflect a minute. So there's 5 characteristics of a high reliability organization. There's commitment to continual improvement to mitigate current and future risk. There's development of systems and procedures that are matched to that criticality. There is alertness to other forces that would affect those operations. Commitment to resilience with formal systems in place to recover from errors. And respect for expertise regardless of rank. In other words, listen to everyone. I think those are the things we've tried to highlight in our recommendations. That the continual improvement that, Shay pointed out, that that's, they want to learn and they want to do more. I think that's a theme that, will resonate well with both management and staff at any organization, and I think a commitment to that will help. I think, getting the SOPs to the point where all staff are understanding them, following them, feel that they have access to them, having the understanding of what's going on with, emerging contaminants, having studies done that help you look at issues that, we just brought up. What does the future look like? Are we seeing trends occurring? Are there emerging contaminants that we're going to have to be looking towards how we can treat them? The cyanotoxins being, one example of that. Engagement across, where we respect everyone in the organization and what they contribute. The idea that, the idea of mentorship, for example, is one of the key ones that I would point out for, especially given that at Ulrich especially, it takes a longer period of time to learn those processes. This knowledge management and transfer that Shay indicated also is a key. And those are the key things that I think associated with a high reliability organization that we tried to focus on in our recommendations, and believe that, we believe it's doable, and we believe that Austin Water's committed to making that move forward too, so.
So you called for, doing more scenario planning. One of the things you said for hot and cold weather, you didn't mention wildfire, which is a real risk, and our plants are in high wildfire risk areas. What would be involved if there was a wildfire and the water supply was contaminated, or you could not reach the plant?
So what I worry about when you have a wildfire is that, as you get that runoff that comes in, you're going to change the organic, not only the total organic matter that's in the system, but the composition of that organic matter. And so one example that I can think of off the top of my head is that if that organic matter changes, it may not be as amenable to the lime and iron chemicals that are being added to the plant to remove them. That can have a cascading effect. For example, if you're not removing as much organic matter, then you have the potential to create more issues with your disinfection system, both in terms of the use but also the production of byproducts. So those are the types of things you have to look at. I think we did mention wildfires in the report as an emerging issue, but we didn't go into depth into it, but those are the types of things that you could do. And there's been a number of studies now, and there's literature out there that has looked at wildfires in other areas of the country and the impacts on water quality coming in. And so I think, reviewing those, looking at what the changes are, trying to understand whether the processes in the plant, how you would respond to them. So would you change your disinfection system? Would you have to increase your contact times to meet requirements, but also minimize the disinfection byproducts that you would form? So that's the type of thing I think about that can occur, and I think there's a lot that can be learned both from literature and you can learn from testing as well.
Thank you, and Dr. Olson, I'll want to be following up with you don't have to come up right now. I'll want to follow up with your staff to think through some of those issues, because I'm particularly concerned about that. Dr. Katz, in the report, you made it clear that outside of these events, the data presented indicated that Austin Water consistently delivered safe and clean water across various measures. We see that in Appendix 2D2. Yeah. What I didn't understand well from the report, though, was that we had asked in the resolution about whether and how these particular situations impacted health and safety risks of our customers. Because one of the questions we got a lot was, I didn't know about the notice, I drank the water, trying to understand what level of risk or health and safety risk we were at, during these water boil periods, if they drank the water.
So I think there's multiple questions within that question, which is why I'm thinking a little bit before I respond. But the first thing I want to say is that when the city issues a boil water notice, that means you shouldn't drink the water. Whether I believe that there's a high risk associated with the incident that occurred is irrelevant, because we're violating a standard, and the standards are set to protect human health. And no one, when the problem is not all of our standards can be based on, I measured this contaminant at this moment in all of the water that you're drinking so that I know it's safe for you. So we are very conservative about what it takes to say that water is safe. And so if an event occurs and we don't meet a turbidity standard, which is not in itself suggest anything about health, it is, we use a treatment technology, we use filtration to say that if we filter this water, your risk will be low that you're going to have protozoa or cryptosporidium in your water. If the treatment process is working, then the turbidity will be low, right? If the turbidity is not low, then, and we don't meet that requirement, then we issue a boil water notice, because the regulation is set based on the treatment technology, not due to the presence of someone seeing a cryptosporidium in the water. So it's a complicated issue, is my point, when we look at this type of technology. Now, Austin Water, follows national primary drinking water standards and TCEQ regulations, and they're testing the water based on compliance. They issue water quality reports to the public. They are under scrutiny for meeting those requirements. And when they do, then the assumption is that human health is protected. That's the goal. So to answer your question, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about the health risks because we didn't feel that it addressed the three questions to a point that we could answer the question, was there or wasn't a health risk? There was a risk because there was a boil water notice.
Thank you. And I think it is important for the public to understand that connection between the higher levels of turbidity and the higher levels of the protozoa in the water, and it's a proxy in some way to the best
Exactly.
of your ability to be able to look at that. And the rules are designed to keep you healthy, whether it comes out of your tap and in that moment you are at risk. We're not able to say at this point in time. Thank you. You highlighted the need to stress test the
Yes.
facility for full capacity. You said so, saying that we're generally running the plant, I think it was 35% of capacity.
Right.
How does one do that safely, and is it normal to not have done that?
Well, it takes time and it takes staff to do it. And so, I think Shay could talk a little bit better to how you would do it at the plant. I'm not an operator, but you have a number of filters, for example, right? So I can operate, even at capacity. I think in terms of design requirements, the plant can run simply 14 out of the 17 and still meet capacity based on the design specs. Okay. If I'm operating fewer filters, then I can increase the flow rate to those filters and test that way. So you notice when we show the plant drawing, there's multiple filters, there's multiple clarifiers. So not all of them are operating at the same time. And so if you can stress test it by, producing, or you can stress test the whole plant simply by producing more water, right? So you can produce more water across the entire plant and go up to that value, and then you just have to have somewhere to put it. As I said, I think that's something that Shay can address better than I can.
Thank you. And so my last question for you, and then I have a couple of questions for Austin Water, is I believe the report suggested that the type of turbidity event that we saw in 2018 was not something we expected to be more frequent with climate change. Can you explain why? Or
Well, for the same reason, we don't expect a 100-year flood to occur every year, but it could occur 2 years in a row. So it's a, a statistical probability. We haven't seen that kind of so that's why.
okay, because it seems to me with climate change, we may see more of those
We may,
events, and that,
but-
we can't just assume we're not going to see it for 100 years.
Well, yeah, but let me say this, right? So, we have seen higher levels of turbidity at the plant that the plant's been able to handle. Okay, so there's higher, and then there's just really, really high. So even the chart that I showed you, I think had, that we put in the document came from, from the data that was presented to the state, and doesn't represent the highest turbidity that was seen during that event. It was even higher than that. So my point being is that that was quite an excursion, and that's why we're saying that. There are excursions, but Austin Water's been able to handle a lot of those excursions and meet water quality standards.
Thank you. I appreciate your time and your team's work. Dr. Olson, I have a question for you and just some things I want to make sure that we're covering at our next meeting. Thank you. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to help us understand what level of information we can expect when you come back on February 15th about the implementation plan.
So what I would like to do on February 15th is review the recommendations, probably in sort of similar groupings, right? This one is about operations, this one is about recruiting and retention, and really talk to you about the overarching strategies that we have to address those recommendations, and then what our progress is. So we want to address the specific recommendations, but we also want to operationalize the way we do that into our normal business. And so we'll want to give you a sense of that, and then a timeline for implementing specific recommendations, as well as what we're doing to drill that into what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. And I know that you're new into the position and have a lot of things to do, and I appreciate the priority that you're placing on implementing these recommendations and what they represent for rebuilding trust with the community. Appreciate your willingness to meet with a lot of the advocates multiple times to talk through some of these issues. So thank you for that. I wanted to highlight just a few things that I want to make sure that the report covers. I don't expect you to answer these right now, but in terms of your implementation report or your presentation, I want to make sure that you highlight what the next steps plans are on the centrifuge and delivering water to South Austin in those contingencies that were raised. Help me understand why you're waiting until the budget to get the new position to oversee the other plants so that one can oversee Ulrich. The implementation date seems off. I'm not sure why we have to wait till October 1st for that to happen. When you report back, if you can please explain how you're going to address the underlying issues that were raised in the 4 recommendations where you disagreed. So you may have a different solution. But I want to know how you're addressing kind of that underlying set of questions that were raised. I know you, in your prior capacity, worked a lot on the power reliability issues. If you can make sure that you update us on the work that has been done to improve power reliability at Ulrich and the other plants. The report recognized that Water Forward doesn't take into consideration contamination of our water or quality of our water issues. So if you can make sure you're helping us understand how that's going to be in the update to Water Forward. if you can explain what you're currently doing in terms of the scenario planning and how you are approaching making those changes. And then if you can provide more details on compensation and what management is going to change to make HR more responsive. That may be at the ACM level, city manager level, but there were a lot of issues that were raised over the responsiveness of HR to things. And then this isn't, I don't know if this is part of the implementation plan or part of your communications plan. Several people suggested in their responses to the report that it would be really helpful in rebuilding trust if we had some simple answers to, like, what is Austin Water doing to prevent cyanotoxins being an issue? And what are you doing to prevent future outages like what we saw? So that the community can hear. We are coming up on several anniversaries in February, and I think the community is on edge, and being able to communicate in that way, I think, would be really important. So I wanted to mention all those, and then I do want to conclude, and this may be for city management in general. I see ACM Good and ACM Bresenio here. I couldn't help but read this report and feel like I've heard these things before. That there are echoes of what's in this report with respect to management and organization that I hear from lots of other departments. So we hear problems with HR moving effectively so we can hire, inconsistent training, lack of training, new staff not trained well, lack of culture of reporting problems. Cross-training means we have few with expertise, a department that is understaffed and has too many tasks for the few people available. We have systems or SOPs, but staff see as voluntary or don't follow. Lack of scenario planning at multiple levels. More work to be able to reach community in the languages they speak. More attention could be paid to internal communications, a backlog of preventive maintenance, and very long capital improvement project timelines, just to name a few, which to me I hear echoed throughout the city organization. And I would really invite our senior management to take a look at this report and not look at it solely through the lens of Austin Water. We have many departments that need to be high reliability organizations that need to be functioning better, that are experiencing the same problems. We saw things go wrong in February of 22. We have a roadmap from this report of what we need to do for Austin Water, but there's a lot of things in there that we hear in other departments, and I'm not going to single out particular departments per se, but I will say, as chair of audit and finance and as a council member, I hear over and over again little pieces of these things, about department morale, different things about communication, not seeing your managers. All of those things happen in other departments too. We need to be paying attention to those and making sure that we are addressing those issues. And I think Austin Water will be in a much better position to be able to address their needs if we're paying attention to some of the more systemic issues that are coming out there in terms of management and organization. And so this is not all on the director's shoulders here. There is an upper management responsibility to look at these echoes and figure out how we address these. We're coming out of the pandemic. We're in a different world, but we ignore these issues at our peril. And while there are national issues, that doesn't mean that we don't have to do everything we possibly can. Everyone wants to come to Austin. Let's put in the effort, lean in and make these things happen. So I wanted to say that, and let me conclude by just saying that this report is more than a list of recommendations. I think it really provides us a roadmap, and so thank you to UT and your partners for your work, and thank you to the city auditor and Kathy Harrison in your office who helped guide that process. I think this is a good model for us to really get the information we need as a council to know where we need to lean in. What this report does is it highlights the need for some systemic change, and I hope that we can embrace the new thinking about our resource management and emergency planning so that we can better prepare for the water quality and supply events that we will experience in this new world. Many cities are grappling with it. We have a roadmap of how we can do better and what we can do here. I believe strongly that our city can emerge from this process and these events more prepared and more resilient. But that starts with transparency and accountability. And as we implement these recommendations, I hope we will keep that in mind and that we will work to really take on the systemic challenges that are really, challenging us in important ways across the organization and in ways that we are capable of addressing. We have great people. We have, from this report, we have good infrastructure. We have to make sure that we're supporting our people and that we have the systems we need so that our management, our leadership can act with the agility that today's challenges demand. So thank you for everyone who's involved. I don't know if anyone else has questions. No one raised their hand. So thank you. Thank you to those who are watching. We will continue this conversation on February 15th. We don't know yet whether it'll be morning or after.